Hello, legendary listeners, and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast. I am one of your hosts, Amy. We also have Morgan with us.
Hello.
Kat is super busy, probably on her 90th Kickstarter of the month.
Feels
So
right.
so Kat's stepping out this week, which is appropriate because I don't know why it's appropriate. I don't really know why I said
feel
that.
like, to be fair, this episode we're going to be doing a pilot pod for the Netflix show Lupin, which is, if you choose, French with English subtitles, which I feel like Kat might not have enjoyed so much.
Totally 100% agree. Instantly, I was like, this is not Kat's jam. Kat is not going to enjoy this. So if you've been with us...
Maybe not a Kat show.
Not a Kat show. If you've been with us for a while, you know that we have a Patreon. And our Patreon is patreon.com/thelegendaryladies. But one of the perks of being a higher level on our Patreon is that you get to recommend an episode that you'd like us to watch. And one of our longtime listeners since well before Legends of Tomorrow ended, Michael Lynn, had requested that we watch this Netflix TV show called Lupin. Lupin. We say Lupin because
Lupin.
it is French.
It is French.
This I did not know.
It is French, of course.
I'm sitting there going, oh, we're going to watch Lupin. Is it about the moon? I did not know what it was about. It's not about the werewolves. There are no werewolves.
I like the idea of
German there.
You did. I think you got a little German. I like the idea of you putting on Lupin and being like, yeah, I can't wait to see some sexy werewolves. And then they're just pulling an Ocean's 11 at the Louvre. And you must have been so let down. Where are the werewolves?
No idea. So, a little bit of history. This is a TV show on Netflix, Lupin, Lupin. And it aired in 2021, season 1. Season 3 just released,
came out,
on October 5th, 2023.
Very
popular.
I'm assuming, Amy, that you had, before this pilot pod, you had not seen any of this show, correct?
I had no frame of reference.
Okay, yeah. So I have seen seasons 1 and 2. I went back and I went back and I watched the pilot last night because I realized it'd been I guess it's been 3 years since I saw the first season. And I was like, I don't really remember what happens in the pilot. I have vague recollections. I have memories. I was like, oh, the handsome guy pretends to be rich or whatever. There's a necklace. But
no idea.
I couldn't have told you anything else besides those things. So I went back and I rewatched it.
I had no idea. I was actually very confused for a hot second because
there are no werewolves.
Yeah, because there were no werewolves.
First complaint about Lupin, no werewolves.
No werewolves. But in addition, I thought I didn't realize that I usually watch things with captions. So I watch a foreign film or a foreign show with the native language, and then I watch captions. That's how I usually do it. But Netflix decided to give me the dubbed option as the first thing, and I just thought my Wi-Fi was bad. I just couldn't figure out why their voices were not aligning. And we've had a lot of Wi-Fi issues recently. So I was like, I guess I'm just going to watch this show where the words don't match up. And it was probably a solid 12 minutes before I really truly recognized that it was in French. And I'll have you know, I knew something was off. I'm like, these sound like dubbed voices.
You can always tell with the dub. You can kind of be like, wait a minute. The voice actors are always very talented, but sometimes you can tell that they don't quite fit. That they're voice acting. You can feel the performance of the voice that's not quite matching and you're like, wait a minute.
Or the environment doesn't match. You're like, why is your voice not echoing when it really should be?
Yeah, or somebody has a really wild accent that doesn't seem like it fits the scenario. I'm thinking
me
back
at the beginning.
I'm thinking back to back in the when I used to watch Sailor Moon as a child, and the characters would have weird, strong Brooklyn accents for no apparent reason, just because it was fun. So sometimes you can tell it's no matter how good the dub is, you can go, wait a minute.
Yeah, so I knew something was wrong, and I finally figured it out. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stick with these dubbed voices because I don't want to have to go back.
You're like, well, now I'm this far in. I'm
committed.
Well stay with the dub.
So I stayed the course. But yeah, so I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I had no idea what the show was. I was just watching it because Michael suggested it, and we trust Michael on this podcast. We almost everything that Michael Lynn has told us to watch or listen to has been a good bet. So apparently, since Morgan has made it through 2 seasons, it is quite good.
Yeah.
So my question, we have our pilot pod kind of outline where we talk about the characters. We talk about what, how does it feel like a pilot? Is it piloty? But my actual initial question is I genuinely want to know, is the pilot and that sort of like Ocean's 11 vibe, is that indicative of the rest of the series?
Yes. I would say it is. Yeah, actually. I think the pilot almost feels a little bit to me like a short movie where it like has almost a clear narrative structure, and like when you get out, like obviously there are still mysteries and stuff like that it leads you into the rest of the season with, but the pilot, I feel like you could kind of just, if you didn't want to go any further, you could watch the pilot and be like, I kind of had like almost a movie experience.
That was very much how I felt about it. And I have to tell you, that was really refreshing. I feel like we've done a lot of Netflix pilots recently where we finish the pilot and we have to kind of sit there being like, that didn't feel like a pilot. And to an extent, a lot of times for me, a pilot encapsulates itself in that it has a story to be told. But if that was the only story you had, it maybe leaves you curious. You'd like a sequel, but you also feel fulfilled. And maybe that's not always what people are looking for in a pilot. But a lot of times I think with how the streaming world works now, it so often feels unnecessarily unfulfilled. Not that they didn't, leave you with a cliffhanger or something like that, but it just feels, it loses a pilot sensation. And I loved that this felt like a pilot. Although it felt more like a movie than a pilot. It felt like a TV, like a made-for-TV movie.
Yeah, I thought that as well. Like, rewatching the pilot, where I was like, it really does feel like a kind of like an Ocean's 11 kind of movie, because the plot of the pilot is that we meet our main character who is obsessed with Arsène Lupin.
Hold on.
Arsène? I'm not.
We would like to go on record
that this is going to be a disaster from my end, at least.
Really going to be a problem. Arsène. Wait, no. The main character is Arsène.
The main character's name is Arsène or Arsène. I'm not quite sure.
No, I don't think there's the Arsène. I think it's
Arsène. Yeah. So he is obsessed with a fictional character who is Arsène a fictional. Lupin. Yeah, Arsène Lupin is is a fictional character, a gentleman thief, if you will, and master of disguise. I'm on the Wikipedia, if you couldn't tell. So this is like a book series that was written by the French writer Maurice Leblanc back in like the early 1900s, like 1905. And so he kind of patterns his heists off of Lupin. So basically the whole pilot is him trying to basically steal this necklace. And we find out throughout the pilot that he has a connection to this like really, famous necklace that like went missing and has come back, and it's millions of dollars. And so maybe he's not just stealing it for the money, right? Like there's like a mystery involving his father behind it. But like a lot of it is like a very straightforward, like a heist story, which is actually pretty fun to watch.
So I'm curious, diving into the structure of the episode, of the pilot, it very much leans into the dual timeline aspect. So you've got the present, and then you've got the past. And the past in this case informs the present story to such a level that without that dual timeline, you lose the story. I feel like there are a lot of books and a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies that use this dual timeline ineffectively, where
I agree, yeah.
they don't, like, they have the dual timeline, but does it really make a difference?
Yeah, I feel like the dual timeline got really popular probably because of Lost and
Lost.
stuff like that. And it got really popular to the point where it became like more of a stylistic choice than like
Mm-hmm.
a story choice where it's like, wait, why are we flashing back? Like, do I need this? Like, could this not have been accomplished through dialogue? And you realize, like, like you said, like the flashbacks aren't really necessary. They're mostly just style. In this case, yeah, you're not going to really understand the full scope of the story without that other timeline, without the flashbacks to his childhood.
I generally don't like dual timelines, especially in books. I get frustrated. I like time travel. I like that kind of stuff. I like piecing things together, but I like piecing things together as the characters are piecing them together. I don't like being omniscient when a character is not. I don't
Mm.
like knowing something that a character does not know. So this played really well. And I think it's the structure and the way that they decided that the main storyline is in the present and the dual timeline is the past. What I tend to get a little bit frustrated about is when the main timeline is the present and there's actually future. Like, oh, this is happening. We're gonna start telling you things that are gonna happen in the future. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, now I'm already knowing things. I don't want to know things. I want to discover things as we're going. And I think that the structure of this pilot was really well done because you learned things at just the right moment. You learned just enough to know, oh, this woman who's selling the necklace, she has a connection to our main character. Oh, this family has a connection to the main character. You learn that moment where our character, Asan, decides to become who he is. Like, you get to see that transition. And I think that this is a really flawlessly done experiment with the dual timeline, and I don't think we always get that in pilots. I think sometimes it's overwhelming or frustrating or poorly done, and I was really impressed with the way that this one flowed. It was just enough.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, looking back on the pilot and realizing he's basically the main character and in some ways kind of the only character. Like, you do get introduced to his probably ex-wife. Yeah, because he's talking about alimony. So
Mm-hmm.
you do get introduced to his ex-wife Claire. You do meet briefly his son in like the last 5 minutes of
Mm-hmm.
the pilot, I would say, and you know that he has like a friend. And that's pretty much it. Like, you don't really get, he's basically, for I'd say for like 90% of the pilot, he's basically the main, kind of almost the only character. Which I thought was kind of interesting, actually. Like, it's, as a character study, it's a really good, I think, set piece, because even in the present and the past flashbacks are really about his childhood. So it's really all
Mm-hmm.
about him still, even in the past, even though you've got the other characters, the really rich, evil Pellegrini family, and and his father,
His
who,
father.
is kind of like the catalyst for what happens in the present, and is the reason why he's going after this necklace. But yeah, like, the other characters, they're there and they exist, but they become bigger characters as the series progresses and they get like more focus. But in this pilot, I was surprised. I was like, oh wow, Claire is like basically not even in this.
So that's what's interesting to me about this pilot is I was thinking the same thing. I'm going, a lot of these characters are straight up throwaways.
Yeah.
Like the three guys who help him with the heist, I'm like, I have
Yeah,
no confidence that we're going to see these characters
you're
again.
not gonna see those guys again.
So it's like this detective dude, he's probably going to be important. The wife is clearly going to be important.
Yeah.
The son, maybe. I have a feeling the Pellegrini woman, like the suit lady. That's all I can think of, suit lady.
Oh yes, suit lady.
They wouldn't have had the swimming scene if she wasn't going to come up again at some point. Does she? Am I right?
She does. She does.
Great.
You're right. I mean, again, I realized watching this pilot that it had been like a hot second since I'd seen this show, and I was like kind of struggling to remember. I remember big things that happened in the first season, but I was like struggling to remember like the specifics. But yeah, she definitely pops up, and she has like a larger role, especially as like he gets more involved, like in the family, and hit like the main character, get more involved, and there's like fun like conspiracy stuff, and so it gets more, the lore of it gets like a little bit more complicated as you go along, but there are still a lot of these like kind of heists that go on, and a lot of him like using disguises and outsmarting people, which is really fun to watch, honestly.
I I I like that it was just about him. I think the thing that hops to mind to me when I think about this pilot is that it was refreshing. It felt really entertaining. Like I was in almost right away. I didn't immediately dislike characters that I'm supposed to like. And that's something that has been, I don't know if that's a trend since Game of Thrones made it popular, love to hate characters.
Oh, yeah. There was a period of time when like the anti-hero type character was like a huge thing. And that like I did overlap obviously with Game of Thrones. But yeah, at some point you were like, okay, at least one person needs to be likable in this thing. Are you kidding me? And I say that having just like almost finished Succession, where no one is likable, so like it can still work if you do a good show, but like sometimes it is a little bit hard when you're like, oh my god, everyone here is awful.
Yeah, and I didn't dislike this character. I thought he was just entertaining. I thought that the flashbacks humanized him in a really effective way, and I did enjoy watching the boy Arsène change and become like when he was all, nice and sweet and mellow and kind of reserved and yes ma'am, no ma'am, and then he straight up curses at the lady and walks away and bumps into her shoulder. I was like, yes, get it.
That's right.
It's just fun to see like the character change, but also to know that deep down he has a certain he bears himself in a certain way. And I was very impressed with how far I could understand this character in just a single pilot.
Yeah, I think that the pilot does like an excellent job of setting up not just like his traumatic backstory of his father getting like accused of stealing this priceless necklace and put in jail, and then committing suicide maybe, and this Asan's character being basically like an orphan at that point. And it does a really good job of setting up his backstory, but also kind of setting up who he is as a character and like his motivations, which I think, as it gets further into the story and he kind of tangles more with this family, you can really understand like why he can't let it go, essentially. Like why this is a big thing in his life that has kind of haunted him, has kind of kept him from being able to like move on.
Now, my question for you, again, remember, I had no frame of reference. I was very confused and did not realize that this was French for 12 minutes. But within about
the werewolves.
I was so confused. But for within 30 seconds, I was like, this is a British show. I was like, this is British. This is English. I was like, this has a very like Sherlocky sort of a feel to it.
It does.
Right off the bat. Why did this immediately feel English? What's up?
There is something about like those European
music?
There's something about those European shows where like you can kind of immediately go like, this is not from America. I can tell that this is not from America. Yeah. It does. You know what? You could have convinced me that this was a British show too, if we're not for the French speaking, which was a dead giveaway to me that it wasn't. But yeah, it does, like, it has the same kind of production, even this like the same kind of production values, I would say. Like, not to say that it's like bad production values or whatever, but like, yeah, it does. It looks like a Sherlock kind of.
It does.
It looks like a Luther.
Yes, a Luther. It's got like, there's something in the way that the camera angles. I think it's the colors. Something about the way that the colors are. It might be quite simply that we see a landscape shot, or we see an establishing shot.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, us Americans are like, that ain't America.
That's not America.
Yeah, that right off the bat.
That is absolutely Europe. Yeah, there was like one point in the show, and I don't remember where it was, like what was happening, where they were in this like he pulls up to in front of this like beautiful building, and I just thought to myself, yeah, we just don't have anything like that in America. Like, man, it's so pretty. Could you imagine just walking past and it's so pretty? This building's probably like 500, 1,000 years old. Yeah, you can kind of tell. It's hard to it's hard to like pretend that someplace in Europe, especially someplace like Paris, is America. It's unless I guess I'm sure I've told this story, but one time I was in Glasgow, Scotland, which I'm sure I mispronounced, and they had set dressed to be Philadelphia, which was so funny because I live near Philadelphia. I'm in Philadelphia all the time. So suddenly I'm just like looking up. I'm in Scotland. I see signs for the Philadelphia Art Museum. I'm like, what's happening? And it was they were filming World War Z with Brad Pitt.
Oh, that's funny.
And apparently they got good filming credits there, good tax breaks in Scotland, so they filmed it there. So I guess I'm lying a little bit that there are places that you could make look like America, but you have to work at it.
Yeah, I have become really too good at being able to tell when something is filmed in Toronto instead of actually New York. Largely because there's a very, like, right off the bat, you're like, there's not enough stuff in the sky. I can see too much sky. If I can see sky, you're in Toronto. If all I can see is buildings, then you're in New York. There's only one show that managed to convince me that it was filmed in New York when it was actually filmed in Toronto, and that was Suits.
Oh.
And it was exclusively because of their camera angles and the fact that the main area takes place in one, like, they've got just the one law firm. And so every time they were outside of the law firm, they filmed in a very, like, it became kind of their classic angles where it always looked like tall buildings. And it wasn't until I was rewatching it where I was like, wait a second, I know that particular area. They filmed FBI there. That's in Toronto.
Wait a minute, Toronto.
Yeah, so FBI really drives me nuts because it's filmed in Toronto and they don't even try to hide it anymore. They're like, we're just going to film. They're like, we're on, I don't know, like 10th Avenue or something. And straight up, I'm like, that's the suburbs. That's a tree.
No,
there are no trees on 10th Avenue.
You are certainly not, sir.
Well, like, that's why I watched enough Law and Order SVU.
I know. That's why I always appreciate, like, the Law and Order SVUs. But, like, I'm thinking back to, like, Sex and the City and Gossip Girl. Yeah. Like, there is something to be said. Like, you can kind of tell when they're actually filmed in New York and when they're just filmed in New York. Because sometimes they also, like, they'll film things in, like, LA on the New York set or something. And you're like, that doesn't look like New York. It's too sunny there.
Or I'm watching ER right now. This is all Fiona's fault. I'm
now like
watching 5 seasons in.
Oh my God.
It's become very addicting. Here's the thing about ER. This is 100% off topic. I now hate all the characters except for one.
Oh, twist.
But I happen to know that 3 characters that I like show up within the next season. Ooh. So I genuinely am sticking around just for Abby, Luca, and Lucy.
I have. Yeah, I've heard about the Abby and Luca thing.
Yes. I know. One of whom dies.
Oh.
But I literally hate the rest of the characters except for Carter. But they are. It takes place in Chicago. They have a really good set dressing for outside the hospital. But I looked it up because I'm like, no, they're definitely filming in Chicago. I've seen enough Chicago PD to know that they're filming in Chicago.
Yeah.
Apparently, they would take trips to Chicago 4 times a year. So they would actually write the episodes ahead of time, and they would literally go and film things so far in advance so that they could get all 4 seasons. Like fall episode or the winter episode, so they could film their characters freezing in real life or actually on the L train. And I was like, oh,
funny.
Back in the day, remember when we did stuff like that? Except now we really do film in Chicago, and now we do film in
It feels
New
like
York.
It would be easier to just film in Chicago than to do what you just described.
Yeah, but that was back then. I don't know if they had a robust Chicago film scene. I think Chicago Fire changed that. I think that made it a huge deal.
Yeah, that's probably true. Because I don't think that there was a ton of things that got filmed in Chicago back in
regularly.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. All this is to say, I think right off the bat, when you look at Lupin, you know Lupin, not the werewolf show. Lupin, you
Lupin.
know right away that it's in France. Which again,
Yes.
I knew that. I did not realize it was French. I was like, this is a very British show. I just was very confused.
This is a very British show. As he stands in front of like the Mona Lisa in the Louvre. Like the Frenchest thing he could possibly be doing, and you're like Sherlock.
To be fair, I was still trying to figure out why the voices weren't matching. I really genuinely, that's how bad the Wi-Fi has been in my place recently. I just assumed that my Apple TV or like my Fire Stick, I just assumed that was the issue. I really was like, I'm gonna just go with this. This is really annoying because the words would line up every once in a while. Incidentally, when they said someone's name.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's the same name, so that's not hard to that's not hard to mess up.
But now, I liked having it in France. I liked having it at the Louvre. I thought that was really entertaining. What I don't understand how the Louvre has such poor security.
Yeah, okay. So I do feel like you need a little bit of like suspension of disbelief because the Louvre has to be like one of, if not the like most famous museum in the world. I feel like the security would be tighter than that, than what was shown in it. Like he gets a job at that security place, like no problem.
Yep, right.
And then he really just walks around like he owns the place somehow. And it was a little bit, I mean, yes, his scheme was like very well thought out, but like I still was like, I don't know.
I still don't 100% know if his scheme really was that thought out, unless he truly intended his like cohorts to betray him.
That's okay. I'm glad that you brought this up because this was the thing that was bothering me. I was like, I feel like the only way this works is if he had foreseen that they were going to betray him and like filtered that into the plan. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Like he had to have
how he would have done the swap.
Yeah, but on the flip side, like how did he foresee that they were going to betray him? Like that feels like a bit of a leap. Like what if they hadn't?
I wonder if
he had like
smart
two,
enough character.
Yeah. If
like
he had maybe like two different plans too, like a plan for like if they did what he thought and betrayed him, or if they didn't and they went along with it, maybe he had like a plan B that he would have sprung into action. But I was like, wow, a lot of this is hinging on a thing that he couldn't really prepare for. Like they could have gone a different way.
Yeah, I think like there would have had to be some sort of incident that had to pop up to have made him get into the scuffle, which could have caused him to switch the pearls and then get it in the trash can, which is very clever, by the way.
Yes, that was smart. I was like,
the diapers part was genius.
The diapers part was really smart. It's what's funny because like early in the episode when he is going over like the lax security of the Louvre, he was like, they check everything except for the cleaning supplies, which never seemed to work properly, whatever they had planned for the cleaning supplies, which I thought was funny. And the garbage, bags, they never check those.
I wonder if he had planned on the cleaning supplies, the chloroform not working.
Ooh.
I wonder if he was like, I intend shit to hit the fan, and when shit hits the fan, that's when I get my opportunity.
You know what? That could be right because the chloroform that they put in that spray bottle never worked on anybody. It seemed like they always had to just like pick up he has like he partners with this guy who's like huge. The guy just like picks people up and throws them around. But it's like, yeah, what if you didn't have all tiny over there? What would you have done?
So things that we like to talk about in the pilot, the structure of it. We talked about the dual timelines. The characters, I do think it's really interesting that we basically are only introduced to what I would argue is one main character and three sub characters. You've got Arsène, the main character, and then you've got his wife, whose name I don't know.
Claire.
Suit Lady, whose name I don't know.
I had to look her up. Claire
Suit Lady
is his ex-wife.
Pellegrini lady,
and
which I only remember because it reminds me of the sparkling water.
Yes, Juliet is
Juliet.
the daughter of the Pellegrini family, which is sort of the evil family that he's tangled with.
And then his father. And I think that those are the other three kind of sub-characters.
Yes. Yeah, I'd say those are like the big important ones. You briefly meet his friend and you briefly meet his friend becomes a bigger character,
his like Felicity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his friend who can like perfectly replicate a famous necklace, and his kind of like antagonist in the detective character who also reads the Lupin novels and right away is like, this whole thing reminds me of a Lupin.
An anagram.
Yeah, and then he's like, that's an anagram. You can tell he's like the kind of nerd that would like read the Lupin novels because he's like, I know a puzzle when I see one.
I actually like that in a pilot. Main character, few sub characters, two quote future characters. So like I actually don't mind that. I think about pilots that I like 12 Monkeys. You meet the two main characters, then you've got another main character, and then towards the end of the pilot they very briefly introduce a character who will eventually become a pivotal character of the show. But it very much focuses on the two mains and then the sub character who also becomes a big deal. And then the suggestion of more kind of sprinklings to come. I like that. I don't, as much as I love Lost hits you, but it's also 2 hours.
Yes, it's 2 hours.
I think if Lost was forced to only do 1 hour, you'd have Jack, you'd have Kate, and you would have Sawyer.
Yeah, or you'd have like,
Locke.
Maybe Locke or something. Yeah, no, I agree. I do feel like sometimes one of them oh God, Bunsen. My cat is just up here. He needs to be here. He needs to be on camera.
If you guys are not on our YouTube page, you should see it.
You should
timestamp 31 minutes because this is fresh.
Bunsen. He's decided to be with us. He's decided to weigh in on how his feelings are. We can see that Amy's cat is also with us. Beautiful Olivia in the background there on her cat tree. It's a very cat recording tonight.
I will have you know, I did just I pet her while she was sleeping on her cat tree, and she was like, "Oh, thanks." I tried to pick her up, and she almost ate my hand.
Yeah, that feels right. That's typical cat behavior. that is cat correct.
Sleeping. Yes. Touch me with your eyes only.
No, thank you. No, thank you is what she said.
She literally looked over. She's like,
"She's like, what? What are you doing?" But yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that's a problem that a lot of pilots get into, which is that they're like, we have to introduce everybody, and that's how you get some really piloty lines of dialogue, like, well, you're my brother. It's like, you're like, well, yeah, no, he's aware he's your brother, or like, or like, when did we meet? Do you remember 14 years ago on that one Sunday afternoon? And you're like, what? Why? No person has ever talked this way to another person, and that's because they're trying to introduce a lot of times a ton of characters and have you like care a little bit about them and get to know them a little bit, and they don't have enough time to really introduce them in a way that's organic. Whereas this pilot was like, the one that you really need to know is like Arsène. Also, he has some history and he has some antagonists, and you can worry about some of the rest of that later, but like focus on him.
I really liked that the history that we did get with his father stepped into a pivotal, like kind of a necessity in understanding what he grew up with from a racial standpoint. Yes. I thought that was really well done. Having understanding that this character is growing up in an area where he does not feel welcomed. Forces him to have to become an adaptable individual because, well, if you're not going to accept me for who I am, I guess I'm going to have to be someone who you will accept. And that's a deep theme that is very clearly present right off the bat. But I really like that his father, I would argue, steps in the opposite direction and says, be who you are, be proud of who you are. Like, this is the world we live in, but I'm not going to compromise myself for what other people say. I'm going to be true and I'm going to be honest, even at the risk of getting convicted of a crime that I did not do. But I really enjoyed meeting his father. I thought that was really, really well done. It wasn't overdone. I thought it was an exceptional piece of writing. I was very impressed. Now I want to figure out who wrote this pilot.
Yeah, I will say, I think that's interesting that you brought that up. Is like, I appreciate that they didn't really steer away from the fact that, these characters experience racism. And it wasn't a huge part of the plot, really. But it was enough of the plot. Like, there were enough moments in the pilot where you're like, oh yeah, no, like, these rich people, probably would treat, him like that, or they would. I think the mother of the family immediately asks him like where they're from, which is, pretty racist. But you can also see how he uses that to his advantage at some points, where he's trying to get the job at the Louvre, and he notices that the woman he's talking to is also from her family's from Senegal, and he immediately bonds with her that way and gets the job that way. So yeah. I like that, like, this is a take on a French character, written by like a French man, but they cast a black actor, and they didn't just go, okay, yep, that's what we did that, and that's our representation. They like actually kind of looked at what it would be like to be a black man in this scenario, and like in this world of like these crazy upper crust, like rich people. Even when the guy at the auction thinks that he's like a billionaire, essentially, he makes like a snide little remark, really well done. Yeah, he makes like a snide little remark, like, I'm surprised like you won, essentially. Like, I'm surprised like someone like you would win. And he's like, what does that mean? He's like, oh, someone's so young. Like,
yeah, is that not what you meant? That's not what you meant.
Exactly. It's kind of, they kind of point out like the microaggressions. Like, nobody is outright saying anything like on the surface racist, but you can absolutely read under the, between the lines of what a lot of these characters are saying.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done.
Who did write this?
Oh, George Kay. George Kay is an English screenwriter who co-created the international Netflix series Criminal and Lupin. He's also worked on shows like The Hour, The Tunnel, and Killing Eve season 1.
Interesting.
Which explains the good writing.
Ooh, I have not yet seen Killing Eve. Maybe that's what we should do, one for a pilot pod.
Ooh, I've not seen it either, but I've heard really good things. And I have learned a couple monologues from it.
Ooh, I hear that the first season was like phenomenal, like so good.
I've heard really good things as well.
We'll have to put that on our pilot pod list. Weigh in.
Add it to the list.
Send us an email and let us know if you want us to do a Killing Eve pilot pod. It is also a very queer show, which also feels like something that this podcast usually likes to cover. So, 2 birds, 1 stone. But yeah, so had you heard of Lupin before this show, like the sort of the fictional character? So it's interesting.
No, okay. So who is this fictional character? So educate me.
When I saw this pop up, and again, my knowledge of this is not based on literary history. I saw this pop up and I thought Lupin, like the anime character, which I realize is pretty funny. So there is a Japanese anime and manga that is called Lupin the Third, which is, the character is supposed to be like the grandson, I think, of gentleman thief Arsène Lupin. Okay. And so this is his grandson and his like, criminal gang. And he's kind of doing the same stuff. He's like kind of pulling schemes and stuff like that, and using disguises and like outfoxing people. So it's an older, at least it started as an older anime. So it like one of the first, I think, animated movies or whatever, from Lupin the Third was like 1978. Wow. But there was a a recent one that came out in like 2019, it seems like. So they're still making the Lupin the Third's animes. But when I saw the name Lupin, I was like, oh, like the gentleman thief anime character. And I this is like the saddest
like, not what
commentary.
I meant.
There's commentary where I didn't know that anime was based off of like a French novel series.
That's funny.
So when they give him like the Lupin book, I went, oh. So you thought it was werewolves. I thought it was anime character.
And together we created something that it was not.
That's
at all.
We were pretty far from the mark.
We were pretty terrible at it.
Oh, like the anime. Sure. I know that. This will be a fun show.
That's what we meant.
But it is funny that there are different versions of the Lupin like character, this like gentleman thief character who is a thief, but he like goes by his own set of morals, which I feel like honestly there's a lot of characters like that out there, but it's interesting that there's, you know, been a couple of like spin-offs from this 1900s novel series, which is super fun. And it seems like apparently, according to Wikipedia, Arsène Lupin met Sherlock Holmes, which is really funny. There was a 1906 story where he meets Sherlock Holmes. I guess like Sherlock Holmes meets a young Lupin for the first time. But it says after legal objections from Arthur Conan Doyle, the name was changed to, and wait for this, Sherlock Sholmes.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Sherlock Sholmes.
Sherlock Sholmes. Oh, that's impressive. That's
it says Shlomes returned for 2 more stories.
That's insane to me.
I like the idea that he was like, that this was like a ye old crossover. And he was like, no, like my gentleman thief character is going to meet Sherlock Holmes. It's going to be so great and everyone's going to love it. And immediately Sherlock, they're like, no, you can't just use this character. And he's like, fine. Well, his name isn't Sherlock Holmes. It's Sherlock Holmes. And he just got away with it. Like they were just like, okay, I guess it's fine now.
Okay. That's so funny.
That's hilarious. Yeah, the Wikipedia page for this this character is very, very long, I will say. So there were lots of Lupin stories, lots of like short stories. I'm sure he met all kinds of people. Other writers, it seems like, also wrote some stories, including Lupin. There have been a bunch of, like, I got to In Other Media, and the amount of films that there have been, very long, lots of them, television shows, stage, and comics. So it's there's also a Sherlock Holmes versus Arsène Lupin video game, which I'm sure everybody's really excited to play. So he is in the he's out there. He's all around.
He's out there.
He is all around.
That's wild. Okay. So I think we're ready to start wrapping up the pilot pod. You told me earlier it's kind of sort of indicative of the rest of the series. Is you obviously stuck through 2 seasons of it. Is it worth me continuing? Like, do we get to see this character grow?
Yeah, I think if you like the pilot, if you came out of the pilot and was like, I really like that, I wouldn't mind watching more. I would try a couple more episodes, because it does get it. I mean, it continues kind of at this level of quality, I would say. I think it gets really good. His character really grows and develops. You learn more about his backstory and about like about the family, the Pellegrini family, but also about how he met Claire, his like estranged, we're not sure. I think she's his ex-wife, but maybe they're just estranged. They seem to have, in the pilot, a good relationship.
They seem to have a decent relationship.
Yeah. And you kind of learn how he met her and how things kind of got rocky. He has more interactions with his son, which I think is also like becomes a bigger part of things. And then you also meet his like friends and stuff like that. And it's really interesting, like the like the story about the necklace and about that family gets a lot bigger and gets to be more of like kind of a conspiracy, which is, I think, is also usually pretty fun. It's like, oh, it goes all the way to the top. So yeah, I think if you like the pilot, and there's also, again, I said this before, but there's more hijinks. Like every episode has, it's like him pulling like a scheme or putting on like a little disguise or doing something where like you're like, how is he going to get out of this? And he's like, don't worry, I thought 10 steps ahead. And of course he will. So I think if you liked the pilot and you liked the like sort of Ocean's 11 feel, and you liked like, you know, him outsmarting everybody, then that is very indicative of like what the rest of the series is. Yeah.
Okay. I think I don't know if I'm going to continue watching it right now, but I think I am going to add it to my extensive list. Currently, I'm just waiting for Abby and Luca to show up on ER.
After Abby and Luca finally show up on ER, that's when you'll watch
After
Lupin.
blank character dies, which incidentally, you know what I've done? I have already gone forward to that episode because it's like it's a really famous episode.
Did you get to the helicopter?
I did look up the helicopter thing. I have now met the character that's going to die from the helicopter.
Okay.
I was curious, so I watched the YouTube clip of the helicopter thing, and it is the most ridiculous thing that I have ever heard or seen. And the sad part is the character that gets crushed by the helicopter, they just think he's missing for the whole episode. They're like, where the hell did he go? Why isn't he here working? They didn't realize he got incinerated and died.
No.
Because he's such an unliked individual. Even though right now I like him, I'm like, great. Can I stop hating the characters on the show that I'm watching that I'm like somehow addicted to?
now that we've talked about Lupin, I do feel like we need to do ER corner really quickly, just as a catch up on ER. So, what characters don't you like? I just want to know. I feel like the listeners want to know.
Peter Benton is an asshole. There's nothing redeeming about his character.
Was he like the main character in the?
He's the surgeon.
Okay. That guy.
Mark Green.
Okay.
Mark Green is the main character.
Yeah.
He was great, and now he's really annoying, and he's driving me nuts. Incidentally, this season, you know who shows up to be his girlfriend?
Who?
Mariska Hargitay. Baby Mariska Hargitay.
No
3
way.
years before she joins Law & Order SVU and becomes Law & Order SVU. I was
That's crazy.
I was like, oh, she's going to be like a guest. No, she's like a recurring star for a recurring guest for like the rest of the season. But her character's really annoying. Mark Green's character's really annoying. Susan leaves after the fourth season because her actress, in the actually beginning of the third season, her actress was a stage actress and wasn't used to didn't really like this grueling schedule. So even though she was contracted for 5 seasons, they let her go. And then they brought in a new British chick whose name I don't remember, who actually I don't entirely hate. And then John Carter's great. Carter's wonderful. But elsewise, all the characters are supremely unlikable. Like I don't.
Well,
I'm very frustrated.
George Clooney. Is little George Clooney still there?
Oh, and Carol's still around. Okay, neither Carol and George Clooney are not too terrible. However, I happen to know that George Clooney leaves at the end of the season I'm on right now.
No,
and
George.
Carol's character's not. Carol's okay. Carol is a good character. So I like Carol and Carter, and that's it.
Carol so the one is played by what's her name?
She was the one who
Juliana
had attempted suicide.
Yes.
And she's I don't know where I had thought that she was like a like guest star. No, she's a recurring character on the entire show. Like she's a main character.
Oh wow.
But even some of her stuff gets really annoying. Oh, and then Dr. Weaver shows up, and Dr. Weaver starts out as like you're like a tough nut to crack, but I think I'll like you, to just me being like, no, I don't like you. I'm very annoyed with all the characters. I just want Lucy and Luca and Abby to show up.
You're like, I know they're coming.
I know, but I only have like a couple episodes left of this season, and I've got to know how George Clooney leaves the show. I'm pretty sure I know how he's going to leave the show, and he's going to break Carol's heart again.
No, George.
Or she's going to cheat on him.
Gasp.
Yeah, gasp.
Wow.
So, yeah, that is ER catch-up corner.
What season are you in?
I think I'm on season 4 right now.
Oh my God. Don't all these seasons have like 28 episodes or something 24. Crazy? 24?
Where am I at?
Ooh,
I'm on
so
season 4, episode 12.
Wow. I am actually really impressed with this. You've watched an incredible amount of the ER in a short amount of time.
To be fair, this is the kind of show that for me, I can watch while doing stuff.
I can see that just based off the pilot. It feels like something that you could have on while you're like folding laundry or something, and you're not going to miss a huge plot point if you look down for a second.
Oh yeah, let me see. Season 5. I'm looking at the beginning here.
You're so close.
Season 5. Episode 1, Hathaway takes new medical student Lucy under her wing.
There we go.
Thank God.
She's
thank
here.
God we get to meet Lucy at some point. So excited. When does Luca show up?
You're so you're so close. You're so close.
Oh man, these people are still around.
You're gonna be stuck with some of the people you don't
through, like all the synopsises of the future, and I'm annoyed that you guys still around. Okay, whatever.
Fiona, look what you've done to Amy. I hope you're happy.
I hope you're happy now.
I think we've established that I need to catch up on season 3 of Lupin, which just dropped, and Amy at some point in the future needs to watch season 1, the rest of season 1.
Yes. No, I love that. I'm sorry. I just saw a huge spoiler while I'm looking through these synopsises.
You should not be reading the synopsis.
Carol gets pregnant?
What? Spoiler alert.
George Clooney's character's gone.
Spoiler alert, Amy. God, not all of us have watched ER.
And everybody who listens to the podcast definitely is planning on it.
I love to spoiler alert things that are like 30 years old. I think that's
right.
You had your time.
You're like, Snape what?
Snape did what?
He killed whom? Nah. All right. So let's wrap it up. Morgan, what do you got going on? Where can people find you on the interwebs? What are the podcasts you do and all that jazz?
Sure, yeah. You can find me as always on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic. And you can also find me as a co-host on Supergirl Radio, where I'm going to be honest, I don't remember what we're planning to do next week, but we're going to do something. I know it. I'll just show up, and that's what we'll be doing. But as always, you can always check out Supergirl Radio. We record live on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so you should check out the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and come say hi to us in the comments. And that's sort of what I'm doing. Amy, what about you? What are you up to?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Actually, I'm really only doing Instagram now. I won't lie. I don't really do Twitter anymore.
Barely on Twitter,
Instagram is Amy_hip. I am taking a break from the theater at the moment, which has been a nice blessing. It's been a very, very busy couple of weeks. But I don't have anything else really major going on. Just trying to figure out my life, figure out a car situation. If anyone has an old car lying around, you hit me up because I will use it.
Feel free, yes.
Feel free.
That reminds me, it's not related at all, but we actually, I was going to say, you should always email us any thoughts or opinions that you have. thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at The Legendary Ladies. You can find us on TikTok at The Legendary Ladies. You can find us on YouTube, where you can watch these episodes at The Legendary Ladies. And you can also find us on Twitter, Legends_podcast, just like we used to be. But if you were following the old account, you should go follow this new account, even though it has the same name. But we actually, speaking of emails, we got an email that I want to make sure that I read this episode before it gets wildly out of date. We got an email from Tom who said, just had to say, after listening to last week's episode, now this was like a couple weeks ago, The Marvels was really a delight, fun and heartwarming, about as good as Captain Marvel, about as good as Captain Marvel, maybe slightly better. So if you haven't seen The Marvels, I have now seen it, and I would agree with that. I thought it was really fun. I really liked it a lot.
That makes me very happy to hear. I actually am genuinely happy about that.
Yeah, it was a good movie. I was like, people were really harsh on it. I think because they've got like Marvel fatigue, superhero fatigue.
Yeah, that's fair.
And That's fair. I can completely get that, but it's not the movie The Marvels' fault. And if you like any of the characters that are in it, it's probably worth it to go see.
I love that. Cool. Do you have anything else that you would like to share, Morgan? Reminder, you guys can find us on Patreon too. If you were a Patreon listener, you could have been joining us live. Turns out, one person just joined us literally as we're about to sign on.
I just saw the comment. It says, "Hi, Michael here. So sorry to have missed this. Michael, thanks for stopping by. You'll listen to it later, but we did talk about your selection. We did a nice pilot pod on Lupin. We both enjoyed it. Good selection. If you would like to also give us selections or pilot pods or suggestions on topics, you should definitely head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/thelegendaryladies. It's /the legendary ladies, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it is. Patreon.com/legendary ladies. We have a couple of different levels that you can support us at, and you can drop by these recordings as we record them live. And sometimes we batch record, so sometimes you'll get an episode a week or two in advance.
Or like today, if you were a Patreon listener, we're going to be talking about cats and Christmas decorations.
We're going to be talking
just
about
a
cats.
little bit. Cats. Thank you to new patron Majuba, who joined us very recently, who was a kind of a Patreon has a feature where you can be a free watcher, and you're basically you're basically seeing anything that we post publicly. It's kind of like you're following the legendary ladies.
Yeah.
But that individual decided to now become a full member of the Wave Rider crew. So thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
And thank you to all of our legendary listeners for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this pilot pod. Let us know if you'd like to hear more, anything specific you'd like. I think we need to do Christmas stuff for December. I think
so. I think.
Oh my gosh.
If you have a Christmas movie that you think that maybe we should watch for the podcast, send that on in.
A prince for Christmas, a Christmas prince, a princess for Christmas,
a castle
Christmas
for Christmas?
princess, a castle for Christmas, a White House Christmas castle princess, prince with the princess. I'm sure it exists. A night for Christmas, a Christmas night.
You joke. There is definitely like it's called like a night, but it's something like that, like a night before Christmas or something with a K.
With Vanessa Ann Hudgens.
Yes. It's the Hudgens cinematic universe of Christmas.
Oh goodness, maybe we'll do that. Well, you guys can always email us. Thank you so much for joining us. We always love chatting. You all have a wonderful rest of your week and stay legendary.